Well, I would like to welcome everyone here to this global home education exchange homeschool global summit. We're so glad that you're able to join us here today, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening in the part of the world that you're in. We're glad for this technology, and we're glad that you're able to be here. In this session, we'll be spending about 90 minutes taking a look at what the Global Home Education Exchange is doing around the world. And we will have board members and committee members from around the world talking to us today. To start, I'd just like to talk to you a little bit about the Global Home Education Exchange in terms of who we are and what we do. We are an international non-governmental organization with a mission to advance, connect, and equip the global home education community. That's what we are. That's what we do. We see home education as education systems where parents can freely choose and control directly the education in a home-based setting. This is known by many titles around the world: home education, family education, unschooling, and certainly other things, but most commonly it's called homeschooling. We're a network where those with common interests and vision come together. We come together to share, to support, and encourage each other to serve as an action exchange. We're about action and we're about exchange. We're made up of home education leaders associated with national and regional home education organizations. We are education policymakers and education researchers with interests in home and alternate education. We began in 2010 when a small group of international leaders met and asked the question, what could we do to support and advance home education globally? The first step involved organizing a global conference where we could bring together those leaders, those policymakers, as well as parents and certainly researchers. We purposed that we would do this in an atmosphere that was not specific to a particular methodology or a particular motivation. The first conference that we held was in Berlin, Germany in 2012, which was the heart of state opposition and persecution of home education families at that time. We then came to Germany and gathered and declared that it was a fundamental human right of parents to freely choose and direct the education of their children according to their values and beliefs. We declared this, and we published the Berlin Declaration. We did not have a plan to do this again, but immediately felt that we must continue to work together to advance home education freedoms around the world. So we planned, and then we gathered again in Rio, Brazil, and dramatically expanded the research components in that conference. At the Rio conference in 2016, we further declared the reality of home education as a right, and we published the Rio Principles, which built upon the Berlin Declaration from the Berlin conference. The Rio Principles systematically summarized the international covenants and legal frameworks that existed around the world and built a compelling legal case for the parental right to freely choose and direct the education of children. Through these conferences, training and declarations were made that we were able to support advancing the policies from a positive perspective, as well as legal frameworks in a number of countries that made home education more practical and legal. In 2008, we held another conference, which was bigger and bolder than any before. We met in St. Petersburg and Moscow, Russia, with over 1,000 people attending. The growth in the home education movement in Russia was exciting and inspiring, and it was served as an example for others in other parts of the world. We had hoped to hold another conference in 2020, but were unable to do it in person due to the global pandemic that all of us were affected by. We did hold numerous online events since that time that involved parents, leaders, policymakers, and researchers from all corners of the globe, and those online events continue today. We are looking forward to another in-person event, and we'll talk about that later. The growth in home-based education exploded due to the pandemic, with the majority of children in many countries receiving education at home involving parents. There were various examples, various methods, various systems that were in place to do this, but the millions and millions of children that were being educated at home was astounding. And we're convinced that this has resulted in dramatically changed public perceptions related to home education globally. We have so many parents that say now, well, we did that and we liked it. Some of them have continued, some have not. GHEX is engaging in important questions that surround home education and is regularly exploring how this innovative, rapidly growing form of education is not only a reasonable response to pervasive difficulties in the traditional methods of schooling, but is even more importantly, it's a right that's a foundation to our common experience in the 21st century. Home education highlights the most crucial factors and questions in the freedom of education discussion. Those questions are: who is responsible for education? What role do parents play in the education of their children? And to what extent is the state responsible for the children's education? We certainly have strong feelings and views on those questions, and they center around the fundamental right of parents to choose and direct the education of their children according to their values and their beliefs, which we believe is a fundamental right. GHEX is a place for anyone with an interest in home education to connect, to interact, to ask questions, to seek advice, and to get support. We're a network. Home education is currently still illegal in many places in the world, like Germany, and is essentially banned in other places. Parents in these countries frequently face big fines, court battles, jail time, and even the removal of the children from their homes simply for their decision to teach them at home. In addition, in a number of countries around the world, the countries severely limit the parents' rights to make decisions about their children's education. Even in countries where there is freedom to home educate, such as the United States and Canada, families must continue to fight to maintain the freedom to raise the children according to their values and beliefs. We believe that the ability to choose home education is a right. It's a right that's well documented in international law. It's our right as parents to direct the education of our children. It's the right of each child to receive an individualized educational experience that best suits their needs and their goals, and that is the heart of home education. GHEX exists to support the growth of this new and exciting education and social movement and seeks to accomplish this goal. Today, as part of this session, you will hear of the work of the GHEX core committees and the regional committees. We will hear from the advocacy committee, the outreach committee, and the research committees, which are working with many partners around the world to advance, to broadcast, and to research these phenomena. This GHEX concept cuts across cultures, across methods, and across beliefs. It exists regardless of motivation or methodology in doing home education. We're working to connect and inform the global education community, from policymakers to home education leaders and organizers, and the families, through the use of technology, newsletters, regional and global conferences, and a moderated exchange of information through it all. GHEX is fundamentally supported by the Homeschool Legal Defense Association in the United States, as well as other partners. But HSLDA USA provides organizational support to GHEX, and we're deeply grateful and appreciate that foundational support. I'm pleased today to have with us a good friend. Jim Mason is the president of HSLDA in the United States, which is based close to Washington, D.C. Jim is an attorney with over 20 years experience defending and advancing home education freedoms across the United States as well as globally. In addition to being an attorney, Jim is a homeschool dad and dedicated champion of freedom. Jim, welcome to our summit here today to speak to the question of why global is important today. Over to you, Jim.
Thanks, Gerald. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here, and I recognize some faces on the panel. Hello to all of you, and I hope one day to become better acquainted with those of you who are out in all the various committees. As Gerald mentioned, I became a homeschool dad long before I even went to law school, and my wife and I wanted to homeschool our children because of all of the usual reasons, and we have 7 kids that we homeschooled right straight through from beginning to the end. My oldest son has 3 children, 1 on the way, and they are homeschooling their children now, and my youngest just started college. So we are all done homeschooling, but the work of homeschool freedom goes on. I became president of HSLDA last August, and before that time, I did not have a lot of direct involvement in the international work that you guys are all involved in, but I did participate very much in the Romeike case, which some of you may know about, where in an effort to get Germany kind of off the dime and recognizing homeschool freedom, I thought that if homeschoolers could be viewed as persecuted by the German anti-homeschooling regime, that perhaps that would move them to consider legalizing homeschooling. So when the Romeike family were really treated badly, especially their children who were being homeschooled, dragged off to public schools in the middle of the day and all kinds of awful things, they came to America, and we filed a petition for them to have asylum here because of the way Germany treats homeschoolers. The original immigration judge agreed with us and ruled that the way Germany treated homeschoolers was in fact persecution, which allowed them to gain asylum here in America. 2 appeals later, the United States courts said that that was not persecution and did not qualify as persecution, and that Germany was entitled to prosecute people who violated their education laws. But it did make quite a splash, and I think it helped move the discussion internationally, and we're still working and praying that Germany would relent. And so since I became president of HSLDA, I've always really admired the work that you folks do internationally. And our good friend Mike Donnelly, who was in charge of our participation in the international work, was so enthusiastic and so energetic and passionate about homeschool freedom all around the world, that when I learned that I was going to become president, I told him that I really wanted to be more involved in the work that we're all doing together. And so Mike Donnelly has moved on, and Kevin Bowden, who's we'll hear from later, has taken on the mantle. And really surprising, because Kevin, not surprising, I guess, surprising in a pleasant way. Kevin has 8 children that they homeschool. He was an Air Force officer, and he was hired not to be involved in international work. But when Mike Donnelly announced that he was moving on, we discovered that Kevin had this deep, abiding passion for international work that we didn't know about or discover in our interviewing process. And his eyes just lit up, and he it was just so obvious that the calling of his heart is to help for homeschoolers all around the world. One of the things that I like to remind people is that when HSLDA in the United States was created back in 1983, we're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year, homeschooling was largely thought to be illegal in all 50 states in America. And, our founder, Mike Ferris, likes to say that if you had asked 50 state attorneys general in America in 1983 what opinion they'd have about the legality of homeschooling in America, they would have said pretty much universally that it was illegal. Here we are 40 years down the road, and homeschooling in America is a mainstream option on the educational menu, available, accessible to any family with lots of resources. And if you ask those same 50 states attorney generals today, they would laugh and say, well, of course homeschooling is legal in all, in our state. So it takes time and work, and there's lots of weeds to pull, but there's lots of good fruit in our future. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to participate with you, and just to express how important I think the work you do in your countries and regions all around the world is to not just homeschool freedom, but to the flourishing of children and parents all around the world. So thank you for having me here today.
Jim, thank you so much. We appreciate the work that HSLDA does in advancing homeschool freedom across the United States, because that serves as an example. But we know that your interest and help goes beyond that. And I know for many years you served as vice president for litigation, and were involved in the behind the scenes work in international litigation as well. So thank you for that. And we so much appreciate the partnership, the support, and the foundational blessing of HSLDA in all that we do. Jim talked about Kevin Bowden. Kevin, I had the privilege of meeting Kevin at a conference in October in the United States, and or maybe it was September. At that point, we didn't know that he was going to be taking the role of Global Outreach Director with HSLDA. As Jim has already indicated, Kevin's a homeschool dad of 8. Was in the military, and actually still is in the military reserve in the United States. His family homeschooled in 2 countries in addition to the United States, so has international experience personally in home education, and has passion. Kevin has been involved in this for a fairly short period of time, but Kevin has been studying, has been contacting, has been looking at what's happening around the world. And Kevin is going to be talking to us with a presentation called The State of the Movement, basically just a little bit of a glimpse of what's happening around the world. Kevin, welcome. Great to have you with us as a partner, and looking forward to what you have to tell us about the state of the homeschool movement.
Thanks, Gerald. Pardon the delays. I figure I had to unmute and advance the slide at the same time. First of all, thanks everybody for joining. This is just very exciting for us to be able to share with those around the world what's going on in the international community with respect to homeschooling. There is a lot that has been done. As has been mentioned, Mike Donnelly, my predecessor, just a phenomenal advocate for rights, for freedom, for families, for homeschool. He took over from a wonderful freedom fighter, Chris Klicka, who started here at HSLDA. The two of them have laid incredible foundation for the work that's being done here, along with all of the panelists that you'll hear from this afternoon or this morning or this evening, depending on where you are. What I want to do is set a little bit of the stage for those that will come after me and give you a little bit of what the state of the movement is right now. And I want to do that with these 2 competing images on your screen. You may have heard of these, you may have not heard of them. On your left, you see the Abidjan Principles, and on the right, you see the Rio Principles. And what these represent, what I want you to gather that they represent, are 2 very distinct and competing ideologies from one another. The Abidjan Principles represent really a statist view. They represent the idea that the state is the primary actor, that the state is responsible, that the state grants rights to parents as they see fit to educate their children. And on the right, you see the Rio Principles. And that represents, I mean, look at the picture there. That represents families together. It represents parents as the primary drivers for education of their children. It represents families that are together in educated and learning. It represents a bottom-up approach, starting with the family, as opposed to the Abidjan principles, which represent this top-down approach. And the reason I want to start here, as you hear from the various committees, as you hear from the regional committees, is because at the heart of this movement is not simply a single policy. It's not simply a single court opinion. It's not simply one nation or another nation. There are ideologies that underpin what goes on in these countries, what goes on in these regions, what goes on in these governments and in these intergovernmental organizations. And let me just read a little bit. I want to read from the Abidjan principles, just 2 of their guiding principles. And then I want to read just a couple of the Rio principles, just to give you a sense of the competition and the very distinct nature of these ideologies. So let me read part of overarching principle 3 of the Abidjan principles, and just listen, if you would, for who's the primary actor and who's responsible and who's in charge here. States must respect the liberty of parents to choose for their children an educational institution other than public education. That sounds great, right? But it continues, subject always to the requirement that such private institution conform to the standards established by the state. So you as the parent, you as the family in this ideology is subject always to the dictates of the state to conform to the standards that they think are best. That's the ideology. Let me read a little bit from overarching principle 8. States must regularly monitor compliance of public and private institutions with the right to education. It's not a concern just with what happens in the public sphere. It's a concern with what happens in the private education sphere. That's what they're concerned about, and that's what they seek to govern. That's the space they seek to enter. So that's one ideology. The state is the actor, the state's responsible, the state promulgates, and the state regulates the private sphere. Let me read this from the Rio principles, principle 8. Parental rights are fundamental rights derived from the mere fact of being a parent. Parents have a prior right from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, parents have a prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. So this is a different ideology that's at stake. Let me read just one more from the Rio principles as we set the stage here. Everyone has a right to education. Respect for freedom of education requires that the state may not prefer a particular educational method or approach, including compulsory attendance at a government-operated institution. So that's where we're at. These are these 2 competing ideologies, and as you hear from our wonderful presenters, I want to keep these in mind. Let me see if I can flip to the next slide here. There are 2, I want to give just a sampling, if you will, of a couple of countries where we see this at play. And you can see them highlighted on this map here. So I'm just going to direct your attention to these various countries and speak really just very quickly to each of these scenarios, and then we can get on with the other presenters. But part of the reason I want to highlight this is because the breadth of these ideologies is global. And this is why we're here as the Global Home Education Exchange, because this is not an issue that exists in Africa. It's not just a problem in Germany or Europe. It's not just a Latin American or Central American or North American problem. This is a worldwide problem, and it requires worldwide coordination, international partnership, and collaboration and advocacy. And that's why we're here. So let me just highlight a few of these just to give you a sense of what the state of the movement is like. Legislation that has negatively impacted in a great way or is being considered is out there in, as you have probably surmised already, Germany, of course, France, I'll talk about that, Brazil, South Africa, and the UK. Let me highlight these for you. In 2022, last year, the French president actually said that he wanted to just outright ban homeschooling. At the highest levels of the French government, the idea, this Abidjan principle idea that private education should simply be banned is there. That's in France. In Germany, of course, as we know, the German Federal Constitutional Court has effectively said that educating your children at home is a fundamental right is an abuse of parental rights. And you deserve, as a parent who educates your children at home, to be treated unequally under the law. they have a right as the state to encroach on your constitutional right of equal protection simply because of your decision to home educate. The Federal Constitutional Court uses the phrase, quote, school refusers for religious reasons. That's the mindset in Germany there. In the UK, or England rather, they became somewhat famous, you may have remembered, just a few months ago for the famous schools bill back in December of 2002, which would have effectively created a central registry for every child in the United Kingdom. And keep in mind, this is a country where homeschooling families are, to this day, still followed, tracked, their doors are broken down simply because of allegations of homeschooling and unfounded claims against these families and these parents. So I highlight these to demonstrate to you that this threat is real and it's here now. Unlike in the US, as Jim mentioned, where they have fought this battle for the last 10, 20, 30, now 40 years at HSLDA, and largely we've been successful. This is very much still a clear and present risk to families over the globe now. There has been talk in Portugal. You'll hear from Sylvia later about a constitutional amendment that would deal with homeschooling. And so again, that's not old history, that's present news. In Brazil, unfortunately, after it seemed like years of some positive momentum with homeschooling in that country, we now have increased regulation, and we now have homeschooling families and the homeschool movement in Brazil being blamed for the January 8 riots after the presidential election. So that's the state of the world, that's the state of the movement. That's why I hope it gives you a sense of why what you're going to hear from with respect to the committees and around the world from the regional committees, why what they do matters. And why we would ask that if you're concerned, if you're interested, if you have an interest, a heart at all for this global community, that you would become involved, that you would reach out, that you would let us know what we can do to better this movement, that you would partner with us and join with us in this movement. There's a lot that has been done, and there's a lot that still needs to be done. So with that, Jared, I'll turn it back over to you and on to the committees. Thank you.
Kevin, thank you so much. It's an exciting place where we're at. Home education movement around the world is truly a movement. The growth that we've seen and experienced in the numbers of families that chose to home educate in the last several years is beyond our imagination. So many countries, the numbers of parents that were homeschooling has more than doubled and tripled in some places, and people are continuing to do it. What we want to do is hear about what's happening around the world, and it's exciting for me and for all of us to be able to see the people that are here participating in this webinar from around the world. Good friends and supporters and partners that have attended past global conferences, that have been involved in our various committees. Welcome here. It's great to have you with us, and we look forward to being able to have you even more involved in the Global Home Education Exchange as we go forward. What we'll be doing is hearing from each one of our committees about the activities for the issues that are being faced for the actions that are being taken, and for the visions that are being cast, and also what can you do? What part can you play in being involved in all of these things? So I want to start with our my good friend, the vice chair of the Global Home Education Exchange Advisory Board, Deborah Bell. Deborah Bell has been involved for many years as a homeschool mom that's done her own journey, but now has grandchildren being home educated, and is a champion for home education around the world. Deborah's passion as a PhD is research and encouraging quality research in home education. And I want to welcome Deborah. She's from the United States and leads the research committee, which is really an exciting area, a foundational area. Deborah, we're looking forward to your sharing with us what's happening in the area of academic research in home education around the world.
Thank you, Gerald. It is really my privilege to be here with you all today. This is such a great opportunity for the second act of my life. I want to thank HSLDA for all they did to make homeschooling legal here in the United States. It was illegal in Pennsylvania when I started, and because of their work, we were able to homeschool all the way through. And now I view my involvement with GHEX as just a small way that I can pay it forward to all of you around the world who do not yet have the homeschool freedom that we enjoy here in the United States. So let me tell you a little bit about the research committee. We are composed of research fellows and regional emerging international scholars and advisory board members. Our mission is to engage, support, and connect a global community of scholars interested in home education research, particularly as an emerging global phenomenon, to curate, publish, review, and disseminate peer-reviewed home education research. And anchoring the homeschool, our research committee are our research fellows. These are established academics with a body of research. And so we are really honored that Dr. Albert Chang at the University of Arkansas and Dr. Carlos Valenti at Oklahoma State University and Steve Duvall, who is the director of research now at HSLDA, are serving in this capacity on the research committee. I'd like to now tell you a little bit about our initiatives, what we do on the research committee. First of all, we host spring and fall research webinars, and we have 2 coming up that you would be able to attend. We'll be sending out invitations. Lisa Puga has a body of research now on African-American homeschoolers in the United States, and Angela Watson at Johns Hopkins has been collecting state-by-state growth rates in homeschooling that she'll be sharing with us. We've had 18 webinars in the past, and you can view those at our YouTube channel. Another thing that we do is we do publish. These are some of our publications. As a result of helping bring out home education research, we were contacted and invited, because of the scholarly interest in home education research, to edit special editions for the Peabody Journal of Education, the Journal of School Choice, and out of that, actually a book I was privileged to edit with Dr. Moranto at the University of Arkansas on homeschooling in the 21st century. And finally, the most important initiative that we have is that we have a research track at our Global Home Education Conference. So if you could advance to the next slide, thank you so much. And we instituted a research track in Rio. We had 16 peer-reviewed papers that were presented there. And then by the time we hosted the next GHEX in Moscow, we had 24 presentations of papers in our research track from scholars all over the world. I think about 16 different countries were represented. We are able to source funding to provide prize money and travel stipends to help our international scholars conduct their research and then also travel to our conferences. And we are able to publish the best papers in peer-reviewed journals. So that's part of what we're trying to do, is to create a global community where we can begin to support emerging scholars around the world, because they do not have the same resources or the same opportunities, certainly not the same funding that we have here in the States. Now I'd like to tell you how you can be involved. And I would be really happy to see your engagement around the research paper. You can or around the research committee. You can join our email list at our website and join our Facebook group. We invite you to consider sponsoring financially an emerging scholar, and you can do that by contacting us in order to source some of the funding to help these scholars around the world conduct the research. You know, I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Brian Ray, who's in the room. Dr. Brian Ray's research was absolutely critical to our winning the battle for home education rights here in the United States. And we need other scholars like Dr. Ray in their own country to be able to conduct the research that supports homeschool success. You can attend our upcoming research webinars. And if you are aware of an academic or an emerging scholar who might have an interest in educational freedom, school choice, or home education, invite them to contact me and inquire about joining our research committee. And there's our contact information. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Gerald.
Deborah, thank you so much. We so much appreciate the fact that research is a key component of what we do, and we know the value of it, and it's just so special. And I just thank you for the work that you're doing in pulling that together, and the exciting team that we have. I just want to remind everyone that there is a chat and a question and answer feature to this webinar, and I know some people are using it, but if you would like to interact with each other or with us, feel free to use that at the bottom of your screen and be able to interact and make your comments, because it's that's one of the ways that we can interact even here today. Our next committee that we want to hear from is our outreach committee, and the outreach committee works to basically support the movement, the leaders, the questions that are out there on a general basis in home education. And Peter Stock from Canada is the chair of that. Peter is a homeschool dad and is the president of HSLDA Canada. Peter spent many years working in government on the political side of things in Canada, and has a lot of experience in the influencing and changing from the government perspective. And that's what we do a lot of, is try to influence policymakers in the educational policies that they're faced with. So Peter, welcome here. We're just so excited and glad for the work that the Outreach Committee is doing around the world. So we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Gerald. Yes, the Outreach Committee is comprised of leaders from homeschooling organizations around the world. And our goal, as the title of the committee suggests, is to grow our network. And one of our key activities is to support leaders around the world as they grow their national and regional organizations. We help them as they grow their capacity to legally defend families in their countries, and as they engage in advocacy at their national or regional legislatures, and network with homeschooling leaders and train up leaders in their nations. Next slide, please. So we've got a number of initiatives underway. A couple of things briefly. We have a newsletter that we publish that gives people an update on what's happening globally around the world. We also are involved in some of the preliminary planning for our next global conference. And as you can see on the slide, something we'd really like to encourage anybody who's running or involved in a national organization to take a look at on our website now, the GHEX.world website, is a series of webinars, and you'll find webinars on a number of topics there that could be of real help and encouragement to you on titles such as First Steps to Creating an Organization, Funding Your Organization, Building Your Team, or Defending Home Education in the Court of Public Opinion. So how can you be involved with the Outreach Committee? Well, first of all, connect us with homeschool leaders from countries and regions that aren't yet affiliated with us. And there are many places in the world where we know there's a critical population of homeschooling families, but perhaps we haven't met the leaders there yet. We'd love to get connected with them. Please spread the news of the global home education movement. You can subscribe to our global newsletter. That, again, go to the GHEX.world website to find out how to do that. And finally, participate in our events, both online and also in person. Conferences that are coming up in places like Africa and globally next year. Thanks, Gerald.
Thank you, Peter, and we look forward to the continued work of the Outreach Committee, and thank you for that. Next, we want to hear again from Kevin. Kevin is the chair of the Advocacy Committee, which serves to to support and coordinate the advocacy around the world. And we've already introduced Kevin, so I won't take any more of his time. But Kevin, welcome, and look forward to hearing what the Advocacy Committee is doing.
Yeah, thanks, Gerald. So the Advocacy Committee is focused on, as you might guess, advocacy, right? We fight. We want to get out there. We want to be a part of the solution. Some of the bullets here, right? Focused on connecting policymakers around the world for positive home education laws and regulations. And there's many ways, there's many, platforms on which you might advocate. You might advocate simply at the legislative level with a particular country. You might advocate at the court level. In the judicial branch, for example, on my prior slide, there was Kenya was highlighted there. There's a group of attorneys in Kenya. He may be on this call here, who's fighting before the High Court of Kenya to defend the rights of homeschoolers. And that's one way that we can advocate with respect to home education. But we really are a collection or a team of lawyers, homeschool leaders, academics. We hope to add many policymakers committed to this home education movement so that we can advocate more and more. We meet every other month. We discuss topics, ideas, action items, how we can best advocate around the world. As you can imagine, advocacy looks very different in different countries. And so it really is a connection. It's learning from one another on, hey, we tried this here. Hey, we tried that there. Or perhaps there's an intergovernmental organization like the UN that holds sway over multiple countries that we can advocate before. So that's who we are. Oh, let me get to my slide click here. Current initiatives. So there's a white paper. Mike Donnelly's been mentioned. Deborah Bell, you heard from earlier. They are in the final stages of this white paper. And I put just a graphic up there, a global policy primer on home education, research, policy, and practice. The hope is that this will provide these policymakers, these folks that we're advocating with, so that they can make evidence-based and human rights compliant policy with respect to home education. The research committee is much needed because evidence matters and facts matters and statistics matter to make these arguments. We need outreach so people are out there who can actually speak on behalf of homeschoolers. And we need policy that's compliant with human rights, that respects the fundamental right of parents to direct the upbringing and education of their child. We're looking at a rapid response team, which is basically people who can quickly be assembled if there's a short notice or pop-up issue, that we can coordinate this rapid response team so they can respond very quickly to testify before a body, do a media interview, whatever the case may be, but they're basically quickly deployable. They're trained, they know the evidence, they know their research, and they're articulate and clear. And then finally, we're looking to facilitate this network of policymakers for policies that are favorable to home education. So those are some of the initiatives that we're currently looking at. How you can be involved, as has been mentioned, connect us with policymakers. If you're listening in here and you're in a country, or you can provide us with any connection to someone at a legislative level, at a judicial level, at a non-governmental organization level, we would love to be connected with them so that we can begin to develop that relationship and that connection. Let us know of what's going on. I mean, we are, as you can see here, we're a team of just a handful of people. But there's lots of people, we believe, that are committed to this movement, that are interested in what's going on. And we need to be connected with those folks so that we're informed and we know when and where to engage. Be an appropriate voice and model within your communities. The best advocate, I think, for a homeschool child is a homeschool child who's civil, who's articulate, who's successful, and who represents the homeschool community on the world stage. I think they are the very best advocates. And the next thing there, gather and maintain contacts in the most active 10 to 15 countries. We're looking at kind of some of these hotspots where homeschooling is a little bit more on the radar, and what we can do to be active and responsive and agile in those countries. And then the final bullet there, what can we do to help facilitate and network amidst policymakers? What can we do to help that? How can we be a resource for you and your community with respect to advocacy before your organization, before your government, before your region, and whoever else may be there? So that's a quick overview of the Advocacy Committee, who we are, what we're doing, and how we hope that you can be involved. Thanks, Gerald.
Kevin, thank you. And to me, this webinar today is an example of how our committees, be it research, be it advocacy or be it outreach can be operating and sharing. As I'm watching the chat scroll through, the reality of what we do is exemplified in the chat, in being able to share together, to be able to connect, to be able to say, do you know so-and-so? I'm doing this, could I get some help? Those are all exactly the kinds of things that we're about. And I just so much appreciate all of your input into that. It's great again to see so many of you join us. Welcome to good friends like Mike Donnelly and Brian Ray and many others that are on this call here today. Great to have you with us. We want to move on to the regional subcommittees. This is a relatively new area of involvement for GHEX. We have so far 4 subcommittees that we'll be hearing from. These are committees that are made up of people, leaders, partners in that region, and are working together to accomplish the goals of GHEX in regions, because we simply can't do it everywhere around the world. We need more boots on the ground, more capacity, and that's coming from our regional committees. And I want to welcome Karen Van Oostrum. Karen is from South Africa. Karen has been involved in the homeschool movement together with her late husband, Leendert, for many years. Leendert was one of the founders of GHEX, and they continue. Karen continues to be involved in the Pestalozzi Trust in South Africa, as well as leading the South Africa leading the African Regional Subcommittee, which South Africa, as well as many other places, are part of. Africa is a big place, a big region, and lots of exciting things happening there. Karen, I know that you've got a conference, another regional conference that's in the works for this summer. We're looking forward to hearing about that and the other things that are on the burners in Africa. Welcome here, and over to you, Karen.
Thank you, Gerald. So I'm Karen Van Oostrum from South Africa, and I'm leading AHEX. We call our subcommittee the African Home Education Exchange, or AHEX. So we have members in a variety of countries in Africa, starting from the north in South Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, Namibia, Swaziland, and South Africa. And although we spread out far from each other, we try to meet every month just to keep in touch and to plan all our activities. So our goal is to encourage, connect, equip homeschooling leaders and parents in Africa, and to protect children's right to learn and parents' right to choose their children's education. Next slide, please. Our current initiatives, the main one is the second African Home Education Conference that we are organizing for the 3rd to the 5th of August in Nairobi, Kenya. And it's going to be a hybrid event so that as many homeschoolers as possible can attend this conference. And our committee members are also advocating for home education in their countries by way of various initiatives, for instance, by HUG, Home Education Uganda, each East Africa Homeschooling Community, the Pestalozzi Trust in South Africa, the Namibian Homeschooling Association, the Liberty and Learning Coalition, Learn Free South Africa, and all kinds of provincial homeschooling associations and support groups. Then we also have established a Facebook page for AHEX, which you can look up, which we used mainly for our first regional conference in 2019. The challenges that we experience in Africa, the first one is the protection of homeschooling rights from state invasion, as Kevin has indicated already. Mainly by states using the Abidjan principles for their guiding policy. And then also, there's also always a challenge to find suitable curriculum materials for every region in Africa. and much research is needed on the various aspects of homeschooling. Then travel to and from national, regional, and international events is also a challenge, as well as the funding of the 2023 conference in Nairobi, Kenya. And we're always looking for sponsors for these events, these international events that we offer. How you can be involved: attend or fund the GHEX conference in August in Nairobi. And then you're welcome to contact GHEX as speakers at or to coordinate homeschooling events. Contact GHEX for provincial and national homeschooling events, to advocate for homeschooling in the media, to help improve homeschooling legislation in your region, and also to help us acquire adequate curriculum needs. Next slide, please. You can contact us at our Gmail address, africahomeeducationexchange@gmail.com. And I end with the quote by Pliny the Elder: "Ex Africa semper aliquid novi." Out of Africa, always something new. And that is homeschooling is wide awake and living in Africa, which has always been a surprise to many people. Thank you, Gerald.
Out of Africa, always something new. The African Home Education Exchange was the first of our regional committees that was active and has served as an example to so many others. I just want to thank you, Karen. It was great to see so many of your committee members on this call here today. Welcome to you all. And we look forward to great, exciting new things out of Africa. The Asia Regional Subcommittee chair is Tim Chen. Tim is from Taiwan and is not able to join us here today, but Tim leads that subcommittee and is undertaking work across the Asia region. I know that he's developing and maintaining contacts in Singapore, in Hong Kong, and a number of places in Asia. Tim has been involved in several conferences, both in person prior to the pandemic and online during the pandemic, and has particularly done a great job of involving homeschool graduates in those conferences. So we're sorry that Tim is not able to join us here today, but as any of you that are from Asia and you want to become more involved, I'm sure that Tim would be glad to hear from you. You can just let us know and we will put you in touch and help with those connections. The next committee that we want to hear from is the European Regional Subcommittee. Sylvia Copio is from Portugal, a homeschool mom and leader in Portugal for many years. We had the privilege, several of us, to attend a European regional conference that happened in Paris, and Sylvia, I'm sure, will be telling us more about that. But it was exciting to see the development, the interest, and the strength of the home education movement in Europe. And Sylvia's leadership and the leadership of so many. I know, again, there's so many of the European committee members that are on this call, and it's great to have you with us. Sylvia, look forward to your sharing about the actions, the challenges, and the visions of the European Home Education Subcommittee. Welcome.
Thank you, Gerald. Thank you all for being here. Let me please begin saying something in Portuguese, because I'm so excited to be here with so many people from all over Europe, all over the globe, but either from Brazil. So, bem-vindos, welcome everybody. It's so excited for me. So, it is with lots of enthusiasm, but with a sense of responsibility that I am here to present you the European Committee. I feel that we are in our first steps, but so many things that we are trying to do already that I believe we can inspire you to join us. So who are you? We are committed and active people from organizations in Europe, from different countries. We are leaders, researchers, authors, trainers, lawyers, who actively work to advocate, promote, and support the family education cause. People with vision and willingness to cooperate and be connected between countries, to support each other and share ideas and actions. We are those who dare to turn wishes into realities for the sake of family rights. So we have here some photos of some of the meeting, precisely the meeting in Paris, because we are in contact with more or less 19 countries from all over Europe: Portugal, Spain, France, Ireland, UK, Germany, Belgium, Swiss, Netherlands, Italy, Croatia, Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, Poland, Ukraine, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Russia, and I'm sure that I forgot 1 or 2 countries. So forgive me if I forgot, but it's just because I feel that we are together as peoples, as faces, as people that want to share and to continue to fight for our cause. So what we are, and some photos from Paris, this meeting, in-person meeting that we did last October in Paris, and it was amazing. So I invited you all to be with us in our next in-person committee that we will see where to do it. Maybe in Croatia, we don't know either, but we'll see during this year. So what we are doing, what we do online meetings to share information and ideas and implement strategies. And we feel that being in contact with each other gives us strength and hope to continue. Sometimes sharing things make us feel less lonely. And it's so important to feel that we are together. We do online training webinars. We are preparing this for different countries to be able to present what is happening in different countries. We are collaborating with research projects. We are trying to begin this platform. This is an idea from France to do a kind of a platform to help families that needs to go from a country to other country because of these different movements that we feel that are happening in different countries in Europe. We collaborate with different programs between us. And we are, as I said, organizing the next in-person European meetings. Stay in contact with us, because as soon as possible, we will let you know where it will happen. And we establish partnerships with other organizations that with us believe that we should continue to make people feel what the importance of defending the family rights. So this is what we are doing between us in contact with each other, but we are facing very particular challenges here in Europe, as some of you probably already know. We feel that we are a continent with this diversity of historical, political, cultural, and linguistic realities. Sometimes it's not easy to be in contact with each other because of this all diversity of things. But we feel that we are facing either this diversity of types of legality. So we have, as people already said here, we have countries where it's completely forbidden to do homeschooling. Others, it's not considered in the law. And in some, homeschooling is legal. But even on those countries where homeschooling is legal, we are facing some changes, some regulation that maybe it's a threat for our freedom. So we are trying to continue to do this work, trying to continue to, try to continue to don't give up to fight this. I'm sorry, I'm here with some noise in my, okay. I'm sorry. Okay, so just ending, The number of homeschool families, the good news are the number of homeschool families increases and continues to increase. The interest in defending the rights of families also increasing. And the recognition of the good academic results that are achieved has increased. There is more and more research and information about the practice of homeschooling. But most importantly, for each of our children, we will continue to educate according to what we consider to be a non-negotiable with any government. Family education is a human right, so we will not stop doing it, instead of fear and lack of hope that sometimes we feel here in Europe. So stay in contact with us, join our group, sponsor our meetings and our research projects, join our email list, get us in contact with more countries and more organizations. Send an email to me if you want to get in contact. And this committee is being renewed now with new and more people. You can make the difference. Please stay in contact with us and support us. Thank you so much.
Sylvia, thank you. And thank you to all that are involved in the European Subcommittee. It is truly an exciting area and not without its challenges. Sylvia, thank you for laying those out. And but within each one of those challenges, there's so often an opportunity. So thank you again. Our last area of the regional subcommittees is actually the emerging one, the one that's probably the newest in activity, Latin American Regional Subcommittee, which is chaired by Dorcas Ross. Dorcas is from Bolivia and is an active homeschool mom, a leader in Bolivia, but leader all across the region. And Dorcas, you have a team of your subcommittee that is so impressive, of people that's working across the region. So Dorcas, welcome, and we look forward to your sharing about what's happening in Latin America.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for staying to the last part of this call. As you have seen, we have been busy trying to, catch up with everyone who has, as someone wrote, began this work. Those are giant people ahead of us, and we're just trying to follow in their steps. We have committed and cooperating creative people from almost 10 countries who are part of the Latin American subcommittee. People from Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Chile, and Argentina are the ones those are the countries with the largest communities. We still don't have enough people from Argentina and Chile, but and Mexico. We're looking to grow those numbers too. About the region, only 3 countries have laws against or in favor of homeschooling. The rest of the region is just a blurry and legislative situation. There's poor research, not enough info. There's need of training in advocacy, lobby, and organization. For instance, only 2 countries in the entire map that you can see there have proper and formal national structures of some sort. Even if it's not a pyramidal sort of organization, but kind of a network. There's only 2 countries who have those, and that is important because if there's not a national structure, then the country has no vision, and everyone is just putting out fires and responding to emergent problems, and there's not vision as a country or as a region. So that's one of our challenges there. So we set up to encourage and connect and also try to equip the leadership of the regional homeschool community. There are a lot of homeschool small groups and communities. So we're trying to reach out to the leadership of those and trying to cast the vision of work together as a region. We have the incredible advantage of all of us speaking Spanish. Yeah, all of us speaking Spanish, even though we have different accents. Most of us, but we are getting there. I want to clap and encourage the Brazilian community homeschool leaders who are here today, because they are learning English and Spanish in order to connect with all of us. So that's something to applaud. We want to see Latin America advancing in the exercise of parental right education at home as a choice. We enhance by choice because there was a time when it was forcing to parents to have their children at home. There is also, it's related to the regulations and legislation in Latin America. Can we move to the next one, please, Kevin? Okay, this is what we're doing currently. We have a research cluster as Latin American leaders from the homeschool movement. 3 baseline studies were launched for the first time ever in 3 countries of Latin America, which is really huge. I cannot say that Mexico is part of GHEX. Cool. It's not our work. The Mexican network has done it on their own, but we're looking forward to work together. But Brazil and Colombia have been working in a baseline study for the first time ever, which is very significant because they're large communities and there was no such a study before. We're looking to launch a 10-year study this first quarter, not only for Brazil, as was reading in the chat, but for the entire lot from Mexico to Argentina. We're working towards that. And there are all other studies, smaller ones that we want to launch this year. We're also building up a mentorship program for our leaders and for youth. We're looking forward to have homeschool graduates, or even not homeschool graduates, but homeschool friendly college students, build together an advocacy lobby research program, because we need help. There's lots to do. We're not enough. What best way to share our vision with the young ones to engage them in the battle, right? It's time that they be engaged because things are going tighter, more difficult every time. And we have a regional conference planned for November. It's going to be held in Colombia, hopefully. And well, we want that to be special. Can you move to the next one, please, Kevin? Okay, some of the challenges we see as Latin American committee is there's some sort of lack of coordination among countries and even within countries. This is the first time we're trying to do something like this, so there's not a vision to run to, so that's something we're trying to work on. There's also not enough resources to cope with the 3 main needs that we have identified, which are information, data or research, and organizational strengthening. There's some lack of vision among some leadership of homeschool communities. Some people who are lone riders and want to do the things alone, which is great, but for the times coming, we really need to stand together, as Kevin said sometime. There's lack of legal framework of laws, education laws, or legislation referred to homeschooling is capricious, and it's changing, and not for good, except for one region, one country, after COVID. Not a good scenario in the legal area. So we would really appreciate, Patricia, have you over the team, a lot of support for our lawyers. It's a small group of lawyers that are helping. From Brazil, Dr. Clemente, from Mexico, Carlos Torres, from Bolivia, and from Colombia, Nora, and we need more people that is related to legal areas. And also there's not means enough to train current leaders and new leadership. So it's complicated work. So how can you help? Our highest priority would be right now to get our leaders to Medellin, Colombia, or Colombia, Bogota by November, when we are going to have our regional conferences. You could also help us mentor our youth, sponsor a college student, or even a STEP +1 means, or even an older leader, a homeschool leader. Invite us over to present our research. share media efforts when possible, and support regional initiatives like this summit or others. Particularly, we're looking to a symposium related to the legislation to happen soon. So if you can support these kind of things that go regional, that would be awesome. I have a last slide to share with you, and it's in Spanish. It says, "La libertad no se pide, se defiende," which means freedom is not asked, it's defended. And if I have learned something from you guys in the northern countries, is that we need to defend and stand our ground, defend our freedom. So that's what we're trying to teach parents, teach the leaders to teach the parents. We have great plans. We're very ambitious. We have little time. We're the newest committee of the entire GHEX, but we're doing what we can to catch with you guys. That will be all from my side, Jared. Thank you.
Dorcas, thank you. We so much appreciate your energy, your enthusiasm, and your vision. We look forward to hearing more about the great things in Latin America, and particularly in the conference that's coming up in Colombia. We've heard from our 3 core committees: research, advocacy, and outreach, as well as our 4 present regional committees: Africa, Asia, Europe, and Latin America. And as you can see, it's a world with challenges, a world that has issues, but opportunities and exciting things that are happening around the world. I want to make sure that I tell you, first off, that we are working on the next global homeschool conference. And our objective is to have a conference in 2024. We have issued a call for proposals for those that are within our advisory board, but I'll issue it on a broader basis. We are looking for proposals of places in the world that could host a 2024 global home education conference. We want to have it in a place where we can make a difference. We've gone to places like Berlin, where we felt we could try to make a difference to advance home education at that time in 2012 in Germany. We went to Russia because we thought that we could also make a difference there and help advance home education in that country. We're not just going to places where homeschooling is a huge problem, but sometimes places where homeschooling is a huge opportunity. And we believe that that is the case in many places around the world, and would welcome fairly quickly proposals to move ahead on planning a conference for 2024, which is not far away. We believe that coming together is as an essential part of what we do. And we can see that just in the chat today, and people wanting and needing and using the opportunity to share together in being able to share the opportunities and the issues and the challenges that they're facing. So that's why we're really committed to doing a conference. We're excited by the regional conferences and the multiplication that they provide. We know that so many people coming to a global conference is simply not financially possible for all. But to be able to go to a conference in Colombia or South Africa or Paris or various places around the world is possible for more people. So we want to expand our regional committees, and it's our goal to expand our regional committees to include an Oceania committee, Australia, New Zealand, and the places that surround that. If you are or know of leaders in those places that would be interested in being involved in our efforts from Oceania, we would love to hear about them. Similarly, we want to expand a regional committee or examining it from Middle East. We recently welcomed Samira Beg from United Arab Emirates as our first committee member for the Middle East, and we're hopeful that being able to expand our regional committees to cover the Middle East is something that we could do. We're excited by all of these things: the next Global Home Education Conference, the regional committee expansion that we see as being the boots on the ground, the ways of being able to accomplish things around the world and support things in a more regional basis is important. What we've asked our committees to do is to meet and to talk about things that come out of this conference, that the opportunities, the things. So all of our committees, the research, advocacy, and outreach, as well as our regional committees, will be meeting in the next 2 months. And we would encourage you to connect with those committees and offer your help. Then we will be reconvening another workshop that will be more interactive, where there'll be opportunity for us to hear from you, not just for you to hear from us in terms of presentations. We'll be doing that in June, and you'll be hearing more about that plan coming up in terms of interacting meeting. Basically, the bottom line for GHEX is that you are needed. Now, whether that's in conducting research, whether that's in connecting your country and your organizations, whether that's in connecting your policymakers in terms of their input and their being able to learn that home education is possible. It is a right, and it is something that benefits nations around the world. But the reality is that each person, be it a homeschool family, be it a leader, be it a policymaker, a researcher, all of us, all people, all persons contribute to this. It's an exchange. It's not about a committee. It's not about a board. It's about an exchange of homeschoolers from around the world. And we look forward to you and for all of your input. Kevin, one of the founders of HSLDA, Mike Ferris, said that the goal, and I'd like to adopt this goal to GHEX, is that our vision, our goal, our desire is that homeschooling would be legal and possible for everyone, everywhere. That's the bar, the mark that we're shooting for, and we're doing that through our committees and through our regional events, as well as our upcoming 2024 conference that we're excited in being able to start planning that. So, Kevin, any comments that you have from your perspective to add to what I've already mentioned?
Thanks, Gerald. I just want to close with a question. I mean, we've hit on the fact that every voice matters, every participant matters. We've heard some of the excitement from all of the committees, from all of the core groups. And I just want to leave you with the thought that the difference between homeschooling advancing in the next 20, 40, 50 years and it retreating in the next 20, 40, 50 years is you. Will you be people like Dorcas and Sylvia and Karen and Peter and Gerald and Deborah and Mike and many, many, many others that I can't name? Will you stand up and say, I'm in, put me as part of the team? What can I do to help? Or will you decide that this is something that's not for you and it's a battle for someone else to fight? And I really think the difference between whether in 20 years we look back and we say, wow, what has been accomplished? Or we look back and we say, wow, what a missed opportunity. The difference between those two results is you. I invite you, I encourage you, I ask you to do what you can to participate, however big, however small, but I encourage you and invite you to do something that's not just nothing. You have a voice, your part matters. We need you to be a participant. And I also just want to close with thank you for taking the time to join us today. It's encouraging to see folks here. I'm reading the chat. I mean, how exciting. I mean, if this doesn't motivate you to what's going on and what can be done and what can be accomplished with a group of fairly small people that are willing to put some love, sweat, and tears into this, then I don't know what to tell you. I'm excited. I'm excited for what's going on. I appreciate the time, Gerald. Back over to you to close it out.
Kevin, thank you so much. Our objective today was to engage. It was to provide an opportunity for people to know what is happening, what could happen, and to be able to say, as many of you already have in the chat, I'm in. It's exciting to see some of you that we haven't seen for a while. Well, welcome to Jonas Himmelstrand, who is the first chairman of the Global Home Education Conference. It's good to keep engaged. And really what we want to be happening is in the course of the next 2 months, use the opportunity to connect We will be capturing all of the chat comments. So those of you that have chatted that you want to be involved or have questions, we'll be going through those. You'll see the contact information here on the screen that gives you the ways to connect, to contact with our various committees. And I would encourage you to do that. Just want to close by thanking you all for your participation, for your part in advancing home education around the world, and for your willingness to be involved. And I look forward and would invite you to come back in June. We'll get back to you with a date and a time and an invitation of a way to engage directly in this movement, because as Kevin so well said, it's about you and your part and your involvement. And I hope that someday we can reflect back to that conference call that happened on this day in March of 2023, when we talked about what could be in 20 or 30 or 50 years. And we can reflect back on how the movement has been able to advance because of the involvement of so many. And so for those of you that are on here from all around the world, we're so glad that you're with us. We're so glad that you're part of this movement with us, because we can't do this alone. It's all of us working together, exchanging, working together. So thank you all, and all the best. We'll be in touch, and we'll be back to you. But what you're doing in this movement of home education is not about your children. It's about future generations and laying the foundation so that this freedom, this joy, this opportunity can be in place for future generations and the generations that come after that. It's a legacy that you're establishing, and I thank you for it, and wish you all a good day, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining.